And for me, like, it all started out as a curiosity. It was like, I just want this thing to exist. It seems right. So I think the first thing to recognize is, you're not going to get anywhere without perseverance and determination. This is Mike McDermott, and you're listening to Dreams and Drive.
Hey, this is Raina Campbell, your Chief Dream Driver, and welcome to the No Parking Podcast, where through conversations and discussions with creators like yourself, we'll find interesting approaches to help you take your dreams out of park, put them in drive, and ride towards success. Hey, Dream Drivers. Welcome to episode 247. I know it's been a while since you guys have heard my voice, since we've had a new episode, but I'm so excited today for you all to hear from today's guest, Mike McDermott. But before we get into today's episode and today's guest, I have a few things to say. So where have I been? For the past month or so, I have really been baby prepping, just taking it easy. I think sometimes we can get caught up in the output, in producing, trying to stick to schedules, trying to be as consistent as possible. And while those things are all essential to being great dream drivers, I do think sometimes we do need to give ourselves breaks. And I was really just getting overwhelmed with just entering motherhood, trying to get everything ready, and still feeling like I had to put out an episode every week. I had to step back and realize it's my car that I'm driving. This is my journey. And it's all right if I have to take another break or take some time off. The year 2020 has really been one that has been teaching us all lessons in figuring out what's truly important at a precise time. And for me, July and even late June and now August was really just a time of figuring out what's next. What am I doing? Where am I going? So I thank you all for being patient with me. If you follow me on my personal Instagram page, Rain Shine Love, you probably seen that I've been out and just trying to enjoy pregnancy. I realize that you're only pregnant for 9 months. I'll be a mother for the rest of my life. So I just wanted to take this time to embrace what I'm doing, who I am right now, and just document, have fun, spend a lot of times with my loved ones, be creative. I did a lot of shoots with my friends, and just really basking in this new part of my life. Some other things as far as Dreams and Drive goes, I have really been trying to also take the time and think about what's the future of the show, right? How will the show be structured? What's going to be the frequency of episodes? How am I truly going to be driving revenue for the show? Because right now I have had the luxury of having other freelance gigs, but I would really like to start thinking about branding the show in a different way and really building out the Dreams and Drive team. There are some projects that I have that I want to get to. I kind of had to put them on pause, such as redoing the website, redoing some personal branding and all that good stuff. But I really do hope once the baby's born, I get into the whole swing of things that we can hit those projects and just, start knocking them out the park. So today we are going to be speaking with Mike McDermott, who is the co-founder and CEO of FreshBooks, which is the world's #1 cloud accounting software for self-employed professionals. And he built this out of frustration after accidentally saving over an invoice. And he spent 3.5 years growing FreshBooks, get this, from his parents' basement. So since launching in 2003, over 10 million users have been able to save time billing and collecting billions of dollars. So this episode is going to be all about his journey as an entrepreneur. He has so much wisdom. He's really been in the game of customer acquisition and building a solid company. We also talk about, the idea of starting with a passion and following your nose, how to stop doubting your own strengths. That's something that a lot of us do, right? We have these things that we're good at. We have these things that we're interested in, and we just sit and doubt it. So Mike's going to talk about how we can get over that fear and what he did to kind of really use his strengths as a way to propel him to the next level. All right. If you love this episode, guys, I'm going to say, please make sure you are sharing it with a friend. This is probably the first Dreams and Drive episode that has gone out in a while. Some of you guys are excited to hear. So please be excited to share as well. You can find us across the board on social media. Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Dreams and Drive. Remember, if you want to get some Dreams and Drive gear, we have Dreams and Drive t-shirts and crewneck sweatshirts available at dreamsanddrive.com/shop. I love to see y'all rocking Dreams and Drive merchandise, so continue to support the show. And lastly, guys, make sure you are subscribed wherever you're listening, all right? Hit that subscribe button so that you get notifications every time we have a new episode. All right, let's hear from Mike. Hi, Mike. Welcome to Dreams and Drive.
Hey, Raina. Thanks for having me.
I am super excited to have you on. For any of our listeners, if you've listened to any other podcasts, big or small, you've probably heard the name FreshBooks come up on one of their ads or something, or heard podcasters talking about how they use FreshBooks. So today we have the delight of actually speaking to the CEO of FreshBooks, Mr. Mike McDerment. I'm really excited to have you on.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, Mike, the thing that I love to start our interviews off is really going back in time. So a lot of our listeners are native to the United States of America, but you're actually from Canada, right? We love our Canadians, our fellow border pals, right?
Yep.
So I would love to ask you, what was inspiring you as a kid growing up? A lot of us, I really think it's interesting to go back to who we were as kids in order to really get a peek into who we are today. So let us know, what was the young Mike up to? What was intriguing to you about the world?
Yeah, and it's so funny. If I could just go ahead and be perfectly honest with you, like, I don't even feel like I was operating on that level. So let's just start with candor and just be like, I was kind of going through my motions, going to school, going to do stuff. I did, I think my loves were kind of, playing sports, being outside, that kind of thing. And, it was kind of, had to go to class between that and had to get up and go to school. So I think, simply put, it was, I was not somebody who was trying to find their muse or feed their muse. I was just kind of staying active, playing with friends. It was a pretty simple start.
Did you have any big dreams though as a kid? I remember when I was a kid, I always said I wanted to be like a ballerina. I wanted to be this. Was there anything that you were really drawn to?
The answer is kind of no. I'm almost like embarrassed by that, because I always look up to people who have these clear visions. And the other thing is like, well, who are your heroes? And again, I just didn't really think like that. I was just kind of going through stuff. And and then what's interesting, and maybe this gets to a little of who I am, and some of what's helped me succeed in building FreshBooks and a few other things, is, people ask about that 5-year goal and stuff like that. And I'm much better at doing that stuff today. I've kind of learned how to do it for work. But, my super strength has been kind of feeling my way through things and finding opportunities. And then once you find those, making them bigger. And so I wasn't clear on what I wanted to do. I always envied people who knew they wanted to be a doctor or whatever. But I've got a nose for stuff. And, when I start getting interested in something, and so my first passion was, sports, and, then as we get into some of that stuff, but it was kind of more like my 20s that I started getting really into things. That kind of led to one thing, which led to another, which led to another. And that's been the pattern for me of find something you love, are attracted to, get into it, learn about it. And then I find just doors and interests start evolving from there.
Yeah, that's really what, life is, a journey, right? And I think sometimes, first of all, don't feel embarrassed. A lot of us don't have these big aspirations or big dreams as kids, but it's really about the journey and then what unravels when things happen to you and how you respond to that. But I do have a question. So how did you end up studying business? I know you went to Queen's University, right?
Yep.
Why business?
Yeah, and to Queen's, and why one of the top business schools in the world. I guess I always so I grew up in a time when on TV you'd have, family ties and stuff like that. And so I'm not ashamed to admit, I love the Alex B. Keaton character. There was, who's basically this little, business guy. I don't know. Literally when I do think about the fleeting kind of dreams I did have, I literally pictured myself in boardrooms. In the future,
doing what? Being the leader, being the cat, what was the role that you saw yourself in boardrooms?
Well, I think it's driving things and building things, right?
Okay.
To me, and this isn't always appreciated by everybody, but there's a creation process in in business, which I've always just kind of loved, right? It's like, hey, there is a vision thing, and and then like we're going to go and build, and we got to get people going in the right direction to go and do that. And I think early on, I kind of strangely would like have visions of being in a board meeting. I don't even know if I knew what the discussions were, but like I kind of knew that's where that happened. And even in high school and stuff like that, I wasn't like I ended up being a member of the student body, I guess, at our school. But I did get some programs off the ground. I was a starter of things that I thought were important. Things like, hey, like let's get all the parents to turn their cars off when they're dropping their kids off and stuff like this. Like, anyways, there's small things, but nonetheless, I like trying to get that stuff going.
You know what I think is really interesting and important about what you said is the idea that there's a specific, that takes a specific skill set, right? And not everyone can do that well. And so you kind of figuring out that you like the idea of building, you like that stage of the process is something that I think is important for anyone to kind of, know about themselves, but also to then realize that you can do something with that, right? There's a space for you in the world.
Yeah, and it's funny, like I'll even say it like this, is like you don't necessarily appreciate your own strengths. You kind of take them for granted, or at least in my experience, I do. And so, one of the things I think, I've come to learn I do possess is a bit of an ability to see around corners or understand pretty clearly what's going to happen next in the next 2 or 3 evolutions of things. So a little bit of vision, so whether it's like a trend with like, I don't know, fashion or something like that, or technology or what have you. And, not what I've come to realize is, man, this is not actually a lot of people there are lots of people in the world who have that, but, most people don't. And my mom, who also possesses this thing, which, pointed out like, hey, like this is actually a valuable thing. And, you don't think about it because it's something you have, but like most people don't. And that is actually valuable. And she's kind of the entrepreneur in our family. And so we're inherited some of this stuff, I think. But like I think that ability to kind of see, and this is why I like building things. And it's clear to me where we should be going and why. And I'm happy to help people, try and see that. And then it gets exciting. We're like, let's just go. Mm-hmm.
And as I was kind of doing some research on your story, I think this can be relatable to a lot of the listeners, and 'cause a lot of us are in our early mid-20s, early 30s. And this idea of those college experiences kind of molding you, right? And the things that you did after college, not really having a specific set path, but you kind of took these experiences and kind of let the ball roll from there. So I know that you were a creator of Frisbee tournaments, right? It's so random now. Like you went to Germany. Talk to me about how these quote unquote random experiences really help build this foundation for you as an entrepreneur, as a visionary.
Okay. This is great. And let's get concrete because I have been talking in kind of high level, blah, blah, blah. So let me give you the story a little bit. So, my journey as an entrepreneur, it literally started with I guess, Ultimate Frisbee. And so that was kind of my first passion. When I talk about my 20s, I love sports and what have you. I got really into playing Ultimate Frisbee, ended up playing it at university. And this is before it was kind of as well known as a sport as it is today. And it's still growing, obviously. It's still kind of grassroots, but it's much, much bigger. And there's like college sponsored, college scholarships and all that good stuff that didn't exist when we got started. There's professional leagues, didn't exist. So I got into this sport. And I was playing at university, and then I did an exchange at business school, and I went to Germany for a year, and I literally played all over Europe. And I came back from that, and I had my last year of undergrad, and I actually ended up leaving the business school and starting 2 businesses. One was basically a league where people could play who were at the school, and another was an event, a tournament. And I brought a lot of the things from Europe. I'd gone and seen those to North America. So hosted this large tournament, became the second largest one in the country. And, it was like 600 people descended on me for a weekend. And, I'd feed them and provide shelter, and they would literally have tents, and it was like a festival and a tournament. And anyway, so that was kind of like, I had no idea what I was doing. I just decided to do it, and I had to figure out how to do it. And that was, sort of terrifying and fun. But along the way, I also realized I need to market this thing, get information out. So I started building websites, and for myself. And I taught myself how to build websites. And this was like 1999. And then each year I build a new one because I was learning and working on my skills. And then the caterer for that event needed a website. And I'm going long on the details here, but you'll start to see a pattern. So I'm passionate about a thing. I have to learn how to build websites to progress it. And then my caterer for the event actually needs a website, and so I start building one for other people. And then I started going through this whole process of understanding, well, what's the point of having a website unless people show up? So I got into internet marketing, and then I was like, what's the point of having people show up unless they're the right people? So I got better at internet marketing, and then finally I was like, what's the point of What's the point of having a website unless the people who you want to show up go ahead and do the thing you want them to and take some action and convert in the way you want? And I got into this stuff I called conversion consulting. And it's getting more and more commonplace today. But, if you think about, 20 years ago now, no one was doing it. And so that was kind of the one thing led to another kind of thing until one day I was billing my clients using Word and Excel to bill them. And I accidentally saved over an invoice and said, there's got to be a better way. And then I built a piece of software to bill my clients that, was, sort of over a decade ago now. And then we went ahead and took that little prototype that I built for my own agency and turned it into FreshBooks, which is now the second largest accounting software in America. We have over 20 million people use the software since we started, paying customers in over 100 countries. It's a global business headquartered in Toronto, Canada. 400 employees growing strong. So that is, that's kind of my story, but, and probably, hopefully not too much detail for the audience, but you can see it kind of started out with a passion and then kind of followed my nose. And, I'm still doing that to this day.
I love that you shared that. I love how you showed the kind of the progression of things, right? And the big thing I think a lot of us often face is this idea of fear and following the next steps, right? Because you could have said, all right, I'm doing websites. I should probably get into the marketing of the websites, but I don't know. I'm not an expert at that. How did you get past that initial, you don't know how to do it, and just dive into it and learn it?
Yeah. So for me, and I don't know if this is a personal thing, but, there are people who come up to the edge of the cliff. I think of like, Wile E. Coyote or Roadrunner or something like that. And like you come up to the edge of the cliff and you want to get to the other cliff on the other side of the canyon. There's a big gulch in between. And I am just like very comfortable jumping off that cliff and figuring out how to land on my way down. Mm-hmm. And not everybody is like that. And so what that means was something like what you asked, like the marketing thing is like, I just was like, once I know what the next step is, I want to get there. And some people are like, love to learn. Okay. And they go and they read books and whatever. I am not one of those people. But if I want to get somewhere, I will go and learn what I need to get to that place. And so for me, it was like, I wanted to promote my own stuff. So I'm constantly, a part of the thing here is I'm just scratching my own itch. I had my own website, I was promoting my own events. I needed to learn about marketing to make them work better. And so I did. Right. And then it turned out that those were things that, my clients, when I built them websites, would also want. So, I'd love to look back and say, oh, it all makes, perfect sense, but I don't think it does. Right. And I don't think it necessarily should. I think it would probably not keep going if it was all linear, right? So there's these jumps along the way, but mostly it's around, I'm trying to accomplish something. What do I need to learn to do it? And yeah, I start out a complete charlatan and then I become an expert, and that's kind of the pattern. Right?
And it's all right to feel your way around things in the beginning. I think so many of us are scared to be beginners. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. And I'll go ahead and tell you, it's like, sort of bless yourself for that, because I'm in this place now where it's like, how do I become a beginner again? Right. Which is a different, so it's like you spend too much time like progressing and doing the same thing, and you want to go back to that well and have the rejuvenation that comes from sort of not knowing. But yes, when you're in that place and you're starting something new, and you haven't had the, necessarily some success yet, let's put it that way, it's very intimidating. Right. It's very intimidating, but, I think you just got to keep in mind that everyone has been on this path. Everyone who you may sort of look up to or want to become or, whatever, like this is a stage in the process and there's no skipping it, like you just got to go through it. And so, just keep going.
And from the story, if you read the story, so on your website, it's it's part of the bio, right? You spent 3.5 years building it in your parents' basement.
True. Yeah, we went from sort of zero to I don't know, a couple thousand customers in those 3.5 years. But yeah, from my parents' basement.
But that's a long time, right? And some people don't see the long term in things. So you could have said after 6 months, this isn't where we want it to be, on to the next. What made you and the beginning team kind of hold on to the idea, hold on to the dream?
Well, for starters, I almost did that a bunch of times, to be clear. And I think that's, as I think of entrepreneurs as folks who, when they don't have a lot of momentum yet, can literally, when you don't have a lot of momentum, it's really easy to go in a lot of directions. And so a lot of ideas spark you. And so when we were in the basement, I had, frankly, businesses that I think in some ways might be bigger today if probably not. But they were pretty attractive. They probably would have been faster to success. And, and I was looking at those and saying, oh, geez, I should switch what I'm doing. I had these clients who needed this thing instead of doing this, invoicing and accounting software thing. And I almost flipped out of it, but I had assembled a team, and, I think the thing that kept us going was actually, I love the team and the people I was surrounded by, and they really believed in what we were doing. And I think we all loved it because we were talking to our customers all the time. And I think in those early years, we didn't get paid dollars to do what we were doing. We got paid with customer feedback. And so we would be on the phone or get an email and somebody would be like, oh my gosh, this thing's great. It's helping me so much. And then we go release a new piece of software and they'd be like, it's even better now. And it was addictive, right? And that proximity to customer is really what kept us going then. And frankly, what keeps us going today.
And with customer feedback, I think it can be tough to get feedback that is not how you ask a question, but you're really asking it to kind of get the customer to say the answer you want them to say. What was your approach for really getting customer feedback that really impacted the value you were able to bring to the product and for your customers?
Well, you were hunting at a thing. A lot of people do research to just confirm their own biases.
Yeah.
And it's a really bad thing. And if you think about it, it's just so intellectually dishonest, right? And by the way, the people who go ahead and do that, they're going to go nowhere fast. You have to kind of find a way, and I had the good fortune to meet someone who just taught me a little bit about how to think about asking questions and doing research, and to make them intellectually honest and open-ended, right? And so we did research in the early days. Not only did we talk to our customers to get a vibe just through interacting and answering support tickets and stuff, doing phone calls, but we do structured interviews, and the questions I would ask would be, I think just that, very open-ended, in your opinion, what is the greatest benefit of this service, right? And so sure, that presumes that there's a benefit. Okay. But I also didn't say is the best benefit from this you make more money, right? That's a terrible question. Because then people are like, well, yes or no. Whereas if you leave it as a benefit and then you just be quiet and listen, you'll be stunned to hear what people who are using your product are going to tell you. In a lot of cases, they would describe your offering and its benefits very differently than you may have conceived of them. And since sort of they are the customer, you need to be, actually listening to them, not, your ego and your prior conceptions.
What problem were you helping your customers solve?
For me, I was it started with scratching my own itch. So we built a simple thing online where you can go ahead and create and send invoices to your clients. That was the beginning part. And so people were like, hey, I want to quickly create an invoice and do it online and share it with my clients. And that was novel at the time. This was, before the word cloud was really even hung on any of this stuff. And so what people would get out of that is, hey, it's cool and innovative. I'm doing this thing online. And that was kind of cachet for early adopter types. But pretty quickly they realized, man, this is a lot easier than pen and paper. And so I go ahead and do it as I do the work. And when I do that, not only does it save me time, but I send the bills out faster so I get paid sooner. And then I don't forget the work and the details I did because I'm doing it today. And so that means I actually ended up making more money. So basically I'm saving time, I'm getting paid faster, I'm making more money. Those became the benefits. And for me, like, it all started out as a curiosity. It was like, I just want this thing to exist. It seems right. I didn't understand how to frame something in terms of benefits, but that's what the customers ended up telling us when we use that open-ended question. They'd explain how it changed their behavior, and they send bills sooner, and because it's so easy, and they get paid faster. So that was like, oh my gosh, we're onto something.
So you had this market validation then. How did you, what were some of the principles or strategies that you and the team used to help build your customer base? Because that's the big thing that a lot of us are like, okay, we have this idea. People say there's something they want, but they can't get anyone to use it.
Yeah. So those were many-fold. They started off with, basically like, kind of ideas are easy, execution's hard, so you got to get a product together. But then, distributing your offering becomes the thing where most things, fail. And so the distribution for us, like, if you think about my story I've told you so far, we did have this benefit of I knew and understood internet marketing, right? And so we actually leaned on that, which was kind of like, happy happenstance. So what happens when you follow your nose? Well, you may have skills that, benefit you in ways you hadn't foreseen at the outset. I didn't know I was going to go and build a software company. So we started out, we did internet marketing. And so we were using SEO, and we got into a bit of pay-per-click. And, I went and sold this thing in communities that I would participate in. So I was doing a lot of internet marketing. And so, I bought ads in like internet marketing, email newsletters and stuff like that, where other people like me were, and started explaining this thing to them. And they were like, oh, this is kind of what I need. That's great. And so we started out there. Then we got into like social media before it was called social media. So like blogging, right? It seemed like people were talking about a lot of stuff, and there was a lot of people moving online, especially the kinds of people in the segments that we were working with. So, web designers and people like that. They were reading blogs. And so we, sort of got into blogging, and people were writing about us on their blogs. And then that's, kind of word of mouth started to build there. And then, you start to build out more and more planks of your distribution model over time. But we were, direct to customer over the internet is basically simplified for what we have been and what we still are.
And you were very niche. So you weren't doing retail businesses. You were focused on service-based businesses. Do you think was that purposefully? Yeah.
So great point. By the way, still true today. So we're number 2, accounting software, and it's, I believe it's because we chose to not try and serve everyone. So we still just serve, service-based businesses, people who get paid for their time and expertise. So, marketing firms and lawyers and tradespeople and, people who, basically non-inventory based businesses, as opposed to restaurants and retail and manufacturing. And so, by virtue of just choosing to serve that group, it has become increasingly strategic. Like, we can just keep our product much simpler and easier to use. And we're more inclined to build things to really well serve those segments. Whereas, I'll use a platform like, QuickBooks is an incredible business and that it's large and whatever, but that software is built kind of for every kind of business and therefore for no one. And we didn't want to get there. We wanted to have something that was more distinct and different because we're competing with a $40 billion company. And so that's what we went and did. And we really stuck to our knitting on that, which is not always easy, but has proven fruitful for us over time.
Comparison can be the death of all things sometimes, right? Was there ever a point where you or the team were like, maybe we should expand? And how did you kind of combat that?
Yeah. So I think, you can expand into serving more and different kinds of businesses, but that can go at like, hey, how do we serve, so we could get into restaurant and retail. For us, like, we started out serving people, who are like armies of one, right? Like self-employed folks was really who we're thinking about. But pretty soon, because we were early to doing this billing automation stuff online, we started to get like multi-million-dollar businesses that, wanted to use us to, create and send their invoices and automate a lot of their billing process. And so those were still in what I would call, the segments that we wanted to serve, right? So they were still service-based. And so, I'd just say, hey, like, especially in small business, like there's a lot of different ways to go ahead and, dare I say, it's not the right turn of phrase, but, to think about and look at and serve the market. And so instead of saying we need to go into retail, instead we said, how do we serve some of these larger firms? that are in these areas, and what difference did they need, and let's go ahead and build that instead. And we're still doing that actually at an ever increasing rate, which is exciting to me.
So then, Mike, along every founder's story, there are always bumps in the road, right? What do you think was some of the biggest challenges that you had to face, especially in those beginning days, and how did you navigate them?
I think my nature is one of an entrepreneur, but I'll go ahead and say learning, the shtick was not easy. And I think there are ways to communicate about what you do to, your customers, which is one way of learning. And then there's like investors. And so, we tried to raise money early days and failed sort of miserably at it. Almost raised $300,000 for like a third of the company, which if you think about it now, and fundraising is not the only thing, but I'll just go ahead and say, I just had so much to learn about like running and scaling a company and communicating to all these different constituents that matter, from your customers to your employees to your, sort of potential or future or maybe even existing investors. There was just a ton, things to learn on every dimension. And I think if you go ahead and work in like a corporation, you go ahead and some of these things become very obvious. I hadn't done any of that. So a lot of that was like, we were first principles on, all those things. On building a product company, I had only built a service company before. So, how do you market it? How do you do product development? How do you think about distribution, like roadmap, finance it? Like, oh my gosh. So it was kind of on every kind of vector that we were, figuring stuff out.
So then how did you, I guess, this might be a hard question to ask, but what was your best teacher? How did you find that you figured things out the best?
Yeah, my approach was always, I have the saying, I like to collect advisors. And so I would be pushing myself personally at kind of the break limit and like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I'm going to do it. But I started to assemble people around me who I would go to and kind of, lay myself bare, like where I'd develop some kind of rapport with them, and where, I would call them and be like, listen, this is all the things I don't know. And for whatever reason, once people kind of become masters and they have a little time on their hands. So in one case, I worked with like a retired, frankly, like oil executive who didn't really know anything about technology companies, but I knew a lot about business. And I would just take my problems to him. And, he helped me, kind of as an advisor do that. And then I ended up meeting, one of the founders of Rackspace. And he became probably my biggest influence as an entrepreneur, because, they'd had such success and they built a really service-driven culture and company, just like we were doing. And so, over time, I started to find these advisor mentor people who, I would just spend more and more time with if I could. And they kind of sucked them into my orbit. And I, always try to be respectful of their time. And I would just show up with these questions where, I really didn't know. And they, what I have found is, go ask for money, you'll get advice. Go ask for advice, you'll get money. Right. Which is I would just go to them with my problems. And how I'm thinking about them, how I define them, and and they just invariably, I don't know if it's a human nature thing. When you see someone in that state, it's hard not to help them. If they're genuinely kind of reaching out and, that you can have some kind of rapport, and I guess I was good at establishing that, then people kind of want to help. It's a human nature kind of thing, especially people who've had some success and want to give back.
Is there a piece of advice that you'll never forget from one of your mentors?
There are many. I'll give you a couple of my favorites. I guess one of them is my own distillation, but the other is not. So that retired oil exec, he was actually a marketing manager person in Exxon, Imperial Oil kind of thing. Anyways, he said there's a 4-letter word in business, which is focus. Because if you don't focus, you're kind of going to be stepping in a lot of 4-letter words. And so that, obviously focus is a 5-letter word. So that really made an impression on me when we were in the basement and I was thinking about going 100 different ways. I just kind of threw my hands up and said, fine, I'll just stick with this one. I'm going to focus. And let's just, always what is the next step? Forget the 150 things I can be doing right now. What is the next step? And I'm just going to do one step at a time. I'm going to get it done and I'm going to move to the next thing. And that to me is the heart of sort of focus and execution. And that was invaluable. But I'll give you the other one, which is my personal sort of business and life philosophy is there's basically nothing you can't do if you have shared values and alignment. And, we are a very values-driven company at FreshBooks. We have 9 values, and we go ahead and sort of ingrain those in people when they join us. We hire and look for them naturally, and then we make sure people are clear on what they are and how they're defined in our business. And we really try to do work to keep those alive and well. And that's kind of an ongoing forever effort. And then thing 2 is alignment, which is like, hey, if you got the shared values, you got the right people in there. If you can get everyone clear on where we're going and why, I think you'd have those 2 things and just magic happens, right? And that, by the way, is true in your personal life. If you think about maybe you're going to get married someday or whatever it is, it's like, hey, do we have a shared value set? Because we're going to get offsidey from each other is if our values are mismatched. Right. So let's make sure we got that foundation. Then it's like, what do we want to do with our lives? And I will attest, my wife and I have spent very little time being really explicit about what we necessarily want to do. But, maybe that's how we're, aligned a little bit because it's not like a written down plan and we're going to go ahead and feel our way through it. But, directionally, we kind of knew. So that's a bit of a ramble. But I think those 2 things, focus is a 4-letter word and shared values and alignment are probably the 2, biggest pieces of wisdom I would try to pass with anyone trying to get going.
So I'm going to get a little bit personal here. Even with building dreams and drive, I feel like the focus part can be so tough, especially if you go back to this theme of fear, right? Because when you become extremely focused, it kind of challenges you to you can't get distracted from the things that you're not good at, right? Or you can't get distracted from things that you try to avoid. Sometimes when you're not focused, it's because you're just avoiding things that either may seem too hard or may seem out of your wheelhouse. How do you then manage that focus, right? And I'm saying that in the sense of how do you make sure that you are efficient and that your focusing is actually producing results for you in the business?
Yeah, I think this kind of goes back to as an entrepreneur, there's this notion of momentum and, you're not going to have it for a long time. It takes a lot of time to build up momentum and get the ball rolling. And when you're in that phase, you don't have the momentum yet. You can't really feel that you're moving. And so you're not getting the feedback of kind of progress, right? And so what I used to say is, it's 27-1. You have to say no to 27 things so you can say yes to one thing and just go ahead and get it done. And so you may have ideas, 27 ideas. You got to say no to 27 of them so you can go ahead and say yes to one and then move it forward. And so I just think that just knowing that you have no momentum, so there's nothing going to carry you along if you stop. Let's just go and accept that is scary. If I stop moving, it stops. It stops now. It never happens. Okay, true. Okay. Now, are we still alive? Yes, we are. So I like to embrace the fear and the pain. I like to this is a thing I often counsel people to do and do myself. When I'm really nervous about something, I think it's not going to go well. I go and envision that thing going terribly wrong. I go live the bad experience, and then I come back to reality where it hasn't happened yet, and it's not certain it will happen. And then I realize in my imagining, I survived even when it did happen. So what do I have to be so afraid about? Let's just get on with it, right? So I think, I guess there's this pattern of accepting, it is a little scary. I just get comfortable with that and then be like, okay, let's move on, right? And let's just literally take the next step. Don't have to do all the steps. It's not going to happen in a day. What is the next step? What can I get done today that gets us just a little closer to the next milestone, however seemingly small that might be? The to-do list. Can I cross? I'm a big fan of the to-do list. When I'm really, even today, if I'm really stressed out and I got 40 things in my mind, I literally will write down a 40-item to-do list and be like, okay, it's on the piece of paper. Now let's start, knocking the things off. And it's I got 7 emails to write. I got 3 phone calls to make. I got, a presentation to prepare. And I just got through 10 or 11 things there. Okay. I got the other 30 to go. And you just chew through it. But to me, that's the process. And it doesn't really stop. You just get more sort of, comfortable that you're going to get through to the other side.
Yeah. And if we're talking about fear, uncertainty and managing that. So this year, March, We're now, I want to say, almost 2 full months into quarantine here in North America. And just this whole COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of people's businesses have been impacted, right? I would love to, and we're recording this just so that people know at the end of May, right? So, Mike, I would love to know from from the leadership perspective, how was it managing the chaos that was COVID-19 or is COVID-19? Like what were some of the things that you had to deal with and kind of deal with as a leader to make sure that you were able to navigate that for the team?
Yeah. So listen, I think there were manyfold, and so we're in May, and like COVID's become the kind of, there's a new normal. I'd call it an interim normal, and we'll probably have another interim and then get the, a return to how things were at some far off point. But yeah, we're in May. And so if I look back and you think about kind of March and all this stuff happening, the first thing was to sort of get religion that this thing's real. I've seen varying degrees of that in public office and otherwise, where people kind of buy into like, okay, this is going to be real and it's going to have effects. And so that was, one thing. You got to catch the flame. And, not having caught the flame quickly, I think would have been sort of disastrous. But I got in the boat pretty quickly there. And we actually moved, people to working remotely before it was kind of mandated in our area, just because, we saw it coming.
Yeah. That vision, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, you read things on the tea leaves. And so we did that. So then you got, let's just start going into there's a whole bunch of dynamics. And I'll go with I think of managing, for me now, it's like I have 3 major constituent groups. We have our customers, we have our employees, and we have our, investors and our board. And so, different things to do for each one of those. Right. And so for our customers, I tried to, and I didn't, perfectly land this, but, pretty close. Try to just get out there and just remind people, hey, there's going to be another side to this. There are going to be a lot of businesses impact, many actually worse than your own. Like, what can we do as a small business community to go ahead and help? So yes. So I went ahead and tried to encourage people to recognize this, A, won't go on forever, and B, there will be, in many cases, more people more gravely impacted than you. Right? Like in our customer base, we've definitely had, people impacted, but the majority are either, a little bit down to flat, and then some are even like much better off. And so if you look at it on the whole, again, we've got service-based businesses, not as impacted as retail or restaurants. And so I just encourage people to think about, how do we support others, right? Like try to, it's also a thing that can make you be more peaceful. It's like, what can you do to kind of actually think about raising us all up right now when it's a terrifying time? So you can sit at home and be afraid, or you can think about like, okay, I'm going to make it, and what can I do to help others and build strength that way? So that was with our customers, what I tried to do. And then we went and we've run a whole bunch of webinars. And by the way, they're free and open to everybody. You can go learn about them on our site, that kind of thing, to help people like, how do I add new clients in a COVID world? How do I adjust to make sure I can still grow? How do I manage costs? Like, we run a bunch of stuff to help people get the knowledge and comfort and community to manage through all this. Then I have my employees, and we had a bunch of different things going on there, a bunch of different dynamics. I found leading employees in this scenario where, we're kind of we have 4 offices, in different places now. And so we have some element of remote with what we do for sure, but, really strong culture, largely revolving around being in the office and the kinds of people that we hire. And so I just found it, personally very hard to read what was going on with my employees and others when you can't walk the hallways and get that informal information. Yeah. Once you move to like Zoom calls, it's all very structured, and you don't have the bump ins. And so, that made it hard to, there's a couple times when I really just felt like we have an all company meeting or something. And it's just like, I just feel like I'm, just not vibrating on the same frequency as everybody. And, that was kind of hard. And so I started doing things like, what are called like skip levels, where you go and visit with people who are in different parts of the organization. And so we've done a bunch of work to try and, just overcome it. And even just as simple as starting every meeting off by kind of like asking, making sure that you're inquiring to understand, but that's that. And then, with our, and we had to, and by the way, like, let's just go here. Like, we ended up having to part ways with some people, which was very hard. And just very hard. That is, as an entrepreneur, there's pretty much nothing worse than, other than perhaps winding your whole company down, like letting people go.
Yeah.
If that doesn't hurt you, you shouldn't be leading.
You have no
right?
soul.
Yeah. You're not fit to lead. Right. And so anyhow, so we had to work through some of that, and it was like less than 10% of our entire team. And by the way, we were still hiring certain roles at that time. So, it's like we have a lot still to do, but now we're parting ways with some people. And I was hanging over people's heads with the uncertainty of how's this going to shake out for a couple of weeks. Like, that was hard. So that's hard. And then, shareholders, they're all like, what do you, or like the board, it's like, what do you think is going to happen? And I actually think our board, we lived through 2008. So we had some kind of model for how to think about this and, what might happen. And that thinking has largely put us in good stead as we planned our way through this. So I think relative to a lot of other boards and a lot of other companies, we were in pretty good shape. But, it's a lot of uncertainty. It's like, how can you, get a plan together quickly and do all this stuff or an adjustment? And, what are the assumptions you're going to build, a plan on in very uncertain times? And so that's, we had to rapidly go and say, these are the 5 assumptions we're going to make. By virtue of those 5 assumptions, this is the new plan. They said, great. And off we went. But so I'm rambling a little bit long, but the point is, hey, you have different constituent groups and they all need different things. And there's kind of challenges in each one.
So then what excites you about, what's exciting for you amidst this whole uncertainty of the future? Like, what's the thing that I guess is helping you stay positive? Because a lot of us just don't know what the future looks like, right? But what's that thing for you that gets you up and keeps you motivated?
Yeah. So I think for me, I'll just go very personal, is I think the mission and vision of FreshBooks is still, it's perhaps even more relevant than ever, right? So I really believe in our culture and how we do business. So that is like something that like is a bit of my why. Like, I want to perpetuate this. I believe, for a whole bunch of reasons, like, hey, we've been a top 10 great places to work for like almost a decade now. Like, there's just a lot that we have to give. And, I feel good about what we do for our customers and for our employees and also for our shareholders. But that gets me up in the morning, and I want to perpetuate that and keep it going and not let it sort of deteriorate or be complacent about it. So that's important. And then thing number 2 is where I spend a lot of my time now is on the future. And there's so much stuff we have to build into our offering that will go ahead and help people in ways they're not expecting and almost can't imagine, that I'm super excited about getting all that work done. It's going to take years, but that to me is kind of the future, and there's still so far to go. Mm-hmm. That is something that kind of gets me going, and I think, and then like, listen, I got up this morning, and let's do it this way: is I got up this morning and I went for a walk, and every day I kind of do that as kind of a centering exercise to kind of quiet my mind and try to prepare for the day and bring as much energy as I can. And today, like, my little internal mantra was like, just be positive. Right. And not always easy for my nature, to be honest. It's like a learned thing. Some people are kind of baked in positive. I'm probably baked in critical. And so I have to overcome, what is, I would say, is my sort of true nature. But I think even that journey of trying to do that and evolve myself in that way, it just never ends. And when I think about, what effect I can have on others and, by making those adjustments in myself, however little they can be, I think that's kind of the journey struggle on a personal level that makes you say, like, hey, some days I'm 2 steps forward, some days I'm 1 step back, but that's okay. And that's life.
Mm-hmm. And we didn't get to talk about the money question. I feel like you've done so many interviews about pitching and your advice for people who are pitching. So if you guys want to hear Mike's advice, go search for interviews where he talks about that with other great podcasters. But the one money question I will want to ask you is this, Mike, is what do you think are the best investments that dream drivers can make in themselves, right? It can be actual fiscal investments. It can be emotional investments. What kind of investments are really worthwhile?
Yeah, let's give this a think. So I think the first thing to recognize is, you're not going to get anywhere without perseverance and determination. Okay. And so I think, the things you need to do to kind of stay inspired so that you can persevere are incredibly important, right? Incredibly important. And so I don't know what those are for you, right? But, for me, for a lot of years, it was like, I'm overwhelmed, like go for like a 2-hour walk with my headphones on and like think it out. And like making time for yourself in that way. Now it's like, get up before everybody first thing in the morning, have time alone and like find peace, right? To get the day started on the right thing. Like those to me are some of the biggest things. I would say like trying to build out a group of people who, are way ahead of you, in terms of their careers, but, would probably benefit, like would find, joy and satisfaction helping grow you if you can be like, so that group of advisors, I think, that's an investment. I think both of these things start from the point of view of if you recognize the job is really to work on you and the other stuff will happen as an entrepreneur, the opinion mine. I think if you start there, then the question becomes, okay, to work on me and get me out of the way and to grow me and learn, the technical things I need to do. And I'm not talking technology. It could be in marketing. It could be in sales. It could be whatever. But like, I gotta keep staying passionate and learning about these disciplines. Okay. But the way that can also be a great source of energy because you're learning and you're growing. But then also knowing I need some people who are going to help me get unstuck. I'm either going to need time to walk around the block or I'm going to need advisors who can help me overcome the hurdles of my own self that are going to present themselves. I think those are, two places I would steer people to today.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And last question, Mike. It's the question I ask all our guests is what keeps you going, right? A lot of times in this dream driving journey, there's going to be valleys, there's going to be mountaintops, right? When you get stuck, what's that thing that really keeps momentum going?
I'll give you a couple of things. Like my favorite days are still shipping product to customers. Mm-hmm. So I think there's, I think there's still delivering for customers that's huge. But I also I just really believe in how we do business at FreshBooks. Literally the culture, how we conduct business. And I want to see that go on and grow and infect others and inspire other companies to go ahead and do that. And those aren't the thoughts I think when I get up in the morning and say I want it to keep going. But I think, I would say just build something you are proud of, right? It may not be everybody else's cup of tea, but something that you want to persist. And if you're getting up every day saying, how do I make money? Stop. That's not the way to do it. But if you want to build spirit and soul and make good long-term decisions that benefit a bunch of other people, I think of employees as customers, just like I think of customers as customers. I think of, the board and shareholders that way too, frankly. But it's I would just say hey, that element of service and how you go about delivering that value to those end constituents, I think know what that is, right? Because that's going to be the thing that charges your batteries back up on a hard day, right? Oh, I've had a lot of seeming failures, but you know what? This client just loved this deliverable. Thank you. That is a really good feeling for a job well done. On to the next.
Yep. So let's transition into our lightning round, Mike. So quick question, if you want to be a dream driver, you have to have your keys to success, right? So what do you think are 3 things that every dream driver needs in their toolkit before they hit the road?
So I think you have to have the will to carry on.
Okay.
Because it's going to be thankless. So I would say, to shore some of that up, you want to have passion for what you're doing. Don't let it be work. If it's work, you're done. Yeah. Just fold up the tent and go home. So you need to think about how is it passionate? Yeah, passion. What am I passionate about? That'll help with the perseverance. I would say you're still going to need the perseverance at times to just get through to the other side of something. I think of it as, sometimes I'm just on a very narrow path where all I'm doing is I'm just keeping going. Okay. There's no, there's you got to know that there's just times, but then there's another side to that and sort of don't give up. So persevere. And then a third thing is, just surround yourself with great people who kind of give you energy and don't take it. I think those would be let's go with those 3 things for today's answer.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mike. This has been such an awesome time getting to hear your story. And I really hope our dream drivers enjoyed it as much as I have today.
Listen, love being here, Rena. Thanks very much. Really appreciate it. And folks, you can do it. Keep going. It's a privilege. It really is. I hope it's I hope this is helpful for at least one person out there.
All right, so that was a wrap for episode 247 with Mike. I hope you enjoyed hearing his dream driving journey and his keys to success. If you love that episode, if you love this one, please, please, please share it with a friend. Post it to social media, screenshot it, send it as a text, whatever you do. Just make sure you're sharing this episode and helping us to inspire other dream drivers to continue going and to never give up on their dreams. You can find us across the board, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Dreams and Drive. And make sure you're using that hashtag Dreams and Drive when sharing as well. If you have not already subscribed wherever you're listening to us, please hit that subscribe button so that you get notifications every time we have a new episode. It's really important, guys. And if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts specifically, please make sure you're leaving us a rating and review. Those ratings mean a lot, and they also help other people find out about the show and find out what others think. So I really do appreciate when I see y'all in there. Y'all are saying great things about the show. If you want to support the show, there are multiple options. You can always purchase a Dreams and Drive t-shirt or crew neck sweatshirt from our Dreams and Drive shop. Just go to dreamsanddrive.com/shop to explore what we have available. And if you want to donate to the show, if you want to be a Patreon supporter or want to donate in other ways, just go to dreamsanddrive.com/donate. As I mentioned in the beginning of the show, I'm going to be slowing down a bit. 2020 has really been a year of reflection for me. In the beginning of the year, that was my plan, to take a break. Then I found out I was pregnant. Then I kind of had to take a break because I just was so exhausted physically, mentally, emotionally, all that stuff. So now, as I'm nearing the end, I'm currently 37 weeks pregnant. I am just trying to think about the future and what's next. I'm super excited to be sharing with you guys this baby dream driver journey that I'm going to be heading on as a mother. So please, please continue to show support. If you have any suggestions, any ideas, any companies that you think might be good to work with, I'm always trying to feature now. Well, I'm looking to feature more mompreneurs and just really letting this journey evolve. You guys have been with me since 2016. You've seen where I started. I started at, working for somebody else and quitting my job, and now I'm a mother. So I just can't wait to just continue to take you guys along this journey with me. All right. Keep dreaming, keep driving. And, I'm not exactly sure when the next episode's going to come out, but I'm telling you, we do have some fire ones in the arsenal ready to go, ready for you guys to listen to. So see you soon, guys. Bye.